and I hope you can see my screen. Can someone verify if they can see the screen being shared to you?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay. Sige, just give me a minute. I'll try to access it using another device and see if everything is okay. So I can see that my screen is already being shared in the meeting. So this is CE23, first course offering for civil engineering students in Xavier University. I think from the 2008 curriculum, this subject is only an elective. So should a student wish to enroll in a GIS or geomatics course, it's usually an elective during the 5th year, meaning that not everyone are accommodated for one class. So when we revised the curriculum for the 2018 curriculum, that is your curriculum, we did not design an elective course, but rather this is a normal offering for civil engineering students. So this is roughly just 1 unit and for lecture and another 1 unit for laboratory. But I'll discuss more about that later. A little bit about myself. You may have known these things already. So should you wish to check more about my work and what I do in the university, you can actually check this ResearchGate link that I have here. I can copy it here. So maybe I can share this later through, maybe I can copy this one. Okay. I can copy this link and then you can just follow this in the chat box. So should you wish to get more information about my work, especially if you're doing your research methods. So if you are interested to work on environmental engineering and flood-related studies, I can help you on that. Just send me an email or a message in ResearchGate. So I initially designed this introduction for CE11, but this is also what I use for my other subjects. So my work is on GIS and environmental engineering, and I've been in the university since 2014. But before that, I also finished my degree here from 2008 to 2013. So my work in Xavier is basically focused on GIS or geospatial technology tools, and I work or have worked on different applications from transportation engineering into therapeutic sanitation for emergency cases and even for flood studies. So, sorry, this is not one for geomatics. Let me check again. I'm sorry, this is the correct slides. Okay, review basics. Yeah, this is the one. So the course will actually teach us on the basics of GIS. Now, GIS is an overarching tool that we use for not just in geomatics or in civil engineering, but in any other application. The slides or the following slides will show you some of the expected outputs that you need to submit at the end of the course, that is sometime February, and also some basic requirements, some descriptions of the course, etc. When we designed this course for you, we actually took it off from a training that we had given for the coastal cities at risk in the Philippines through the National Resilience Council and Epimetrics. We actually use GIS, geospatial tools, and geomatics to create a web-based platform where anyone can check and see the updates for COVID-19 in key cities in the Philippines. So I think we trained about 5 of them, 5 cities from Cagayan de Oro, Zamboanga City, Iloilo, Naga, Ormoc, and Lupa. And currently we're doing this one for the province province of Bataan. Bataan is located in the central part of Luzon, and they're actually using the platform for communication and easy dissemination of information, not just for COVID-19, but also in other applications. So I'll show you some of these outputs later, and to give you some um, taste perhaps of how your projects will look like when you finish the course. So the content will just focus on 5 key things. First, we'll talk about people and how we work with the GIS and the tools. We'll talk about software, hardware, and some of the methods that we also use in this course. Now, by definition, we will work on GIS, but for the session tomorrow, we'll discuss more in detail about this. But by now, you should have an understanding that we will use computer-generated outputs from your hardware, software, and data that you're working on, or the data that you will be working on. And my advice to you is that you use whichever application you want GIS to be of help to you with your research or your planned final year project study para ano siya ba? Para sa Bisaya pa duhay igo or sa English pa hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. So you're working in your projects and also working with your research study for the course. So we will really work with what's the content of GIS from maps, from doing analysis. So the analysis part can be flexible and can be applied in different specializations in CE and even outside of the civil engineering discipline. We will work entirely with data, some software, remote sensing using satellite data, and we'll work on how you can better prepare yourself for future careers. We can also work with apps, but our limitation here is that you can design a page or a web-based application where you can display your data and show it to everyone. We'll work with different data types in this course, and by design, you will work with a software which will try to convert vector data. These are measurable data using points and lines, and also those that can be taken from satellite data. So this will be in the form of rasters. When you say rasters, it's a composition of pixels, so such as those that are shown here in the right side. So you see that there's a big difference when you use vector data and raster data. So in vector, you can really define the location of a point, but in raster, as we say it in pictures, it's pixelated because each of the fragments of that image is a composition of small pixels. So these pixels will lead to the general feature of your data. The layers will then be put into attributes. So this is an example of a workflow that you will be utilizing in your final project. So you will use mapping and data information and put it into the tool, which is in GIS. And we will publish it online. So you will have different layers from point data, such as if you're using customer data, lines for streets perhaps, or areas for parcels. Parcel are like polygons in map. You will also use elevation data, land usage, real-world data, and even for publishing them, so we will have different layer views from yourself or your groups for staff reviewing to staff reporting, and then if you decide to publish it online and also validate those information that you publish online. So we will symbolize the where because we're working on the science of where, and hopefully this information that you will be sharing will be accessible and validated. So the data types further can be grouped into lines. points, polygons. So these are just examples of how you can represent your data. If it's for a city scale, you can use GIS to plot your point data. Your line data, for example, rail, roads, or even normal roads, and zip codes if you're using parcels or polygons to represent an area and add some attributes about that information. So we will work with real world data and put it into map data later. This map data can have different information. So that's why you're quite flexible on which application you want it to be, whether it's within the field of civil engineering or if you're interested with other applications which utilizes the tools, so that will be okay. And an example of a web-based output that you will be producing is shown in the right side. This is a web-based platform where if I click one single line here, it will show me the information of, say, a pipeline, and then the current statistics in that pipeline. So we'll work on that data, whether it's descriptive statistics or if you're working on models, if you're doing regression analysis. In terms of people, we'll discuss this tomorrow more. We will learn to learn some few tools. So through this training at this time, it's a course for you. You will work with projects, and later this can be applied for specialized projects. One thing that we also offer to everyone is that once you finish the course, you can choose to work on a project with an application for renewable energy, but this is optional. So we will let you attend the training for renewable energy, and we will give you some data which you can work on. And if you finish the project and present to us the map for the information, you will get a verified certificate from Xavier University and from our partners in Ateneo de Manila and from the European Union. So this project is for the Mindasales Center that I'm currently working on. So if ever you choose to submit a work on that, it's optional, but this will somehow direct you to another path where you can get verified certificates from valid organizations. So for added skills, perhaps, and added profile, to add to your profile rather, for your plans in your work later. So there are different classifications of users, but what we intend to you, for you rather, is that from viewers, so such as this one, viewer pa lang siya, but later we will climb up the ladder and turn you into editors, field workers perhaps. We can do some simulations for that. If you're gonna be a creator, or if you intend to be a GIS professional in the future. Example of a workload that you can work on is this one. This is for a fire risk zone map. So we will use different data sets. An example is if we have a land cover type and a value for road distances, distance from settlements, slopes, and even elevation, and you assign scores for each of these layers, we can then produce a fire risk zone map. So it is one of an example of how we can work with GIS, and it has many applications in that case. When we work with GIS, we really have to define first if that project can be workable or mappable. So we need to satisfy 5 questions for that. First question would be location. So what exists at a particular location? Kung saan naatira? Is there fire? Is there earthquake? Or a probability of earthquake occurrence? Or say there is COVID in that case. And the condition is whether we need to identify locations where certain conditions exist. Say there's COVID, and then there are comorbidities in the area. And then later we can put trends, like if this person walks in this area where there are probable cases of COVID, so what will be the future trends? So things like that. And we can also work with patterns, with models and statistical tools. We can do that, and also some other spatial tools. Now, modeling, again, it leads to what ifs. So if say there's more COVID cases, what would be the further impact? So it could be in the economy, perhaps on future lockdowns, an increase perhaps in certain price. Say if there's more people having COVID, will it affect the cost of face masks, which are being sold in that area, say the central business district? So because those are location-based questions, we can do that by answering these 5 key questions. So the workaround for GIS work is that you always answer these 5 questions. So if it satisfies all of them, then it's good to go for mapping. So if you're also interested to have this one in your thesis, that will be also beneficial for you. Okay, your objectives can have at least one of this, and you can use GIS to improve your workflow or to answer certain research questions. So I'll flash through the screen some of the example projects that we did using story maps. And I think some of you already had an experience on how to use story maps. If you were under my class in programming, so you know these things, it's a little bit tricky to build some of the components of the story maps, but I'll guide you again through the process on how to build one and where to get data. So this is an example of what we did in Iloilo City. These are cases of COVID mapped all over the city. As you can see, the southern portion, we have the concentration of COVID cases. And perhaps we can ask the question, so why is the case in the southern section higher compared to the other parts in the city? So this might explain some things. So we also map some facilities like where are the quarantine facilities. So these are hotels, public schools, and hospitals. And accordingly, they were rather platted and put into scale and colors. So if it's gray, these are for schools, and then for violet, these might be hotels or any other facility. Further to that, you can also do further analysis like this one. This is for social vulnerability. This means that what will be or what are their existing or intrinsic profiles which makes them prone to COVID. So it could be based on their poverty or based on their age. Okay, COVID perhaps affects those who are poor. Okay, syempre wala sila panginabuhi. Or it could also be because of their age. Kaya ang bata o tigulang are more prone to having COVID. Or it could be the condition that they have. So there are different categories and factors that were considered to map out these vulnerabilities. And further, if you want to show other details like number of informal setters, persons with disabilities, if you have this data, so this is good. Age profiles like age 0 to 14 and those 65 and up. So these are hotspots for COVID, especially for severe cases of COVID. So pwede natin na siya mabuhat with GIS. So I'm not limiting your final project later to COVID, but it's like the parang uso at the moment. So if you want to work on COVID, that will also be timely and good for whichever application you want it to be. So other information, you can even layer infrastructure like location of basketball courts or storm surges. So you can do that with GIS and geomatic tools. So this is another example for flood. If you layer flood, so many were asking already for research on flood, but you might reconsider because majority of the Philippines already have studies on flooding. So kung flood assessment lang, dagan na nabuhat. What you need perhaps is design things and infrastructure to prevent flooding. So kana ang wala kayo. Okay. We may have a dike, but what will be the effect if the dike is incomplete? Or what will be the effect of the dike if we build it too or too high? So kana aspect lang, it's very civil engineering. Matubo ng forte mo construct of things. But the question nga, where will the areas be flooded if you perhaps increase the height of the dike? Or what if you add more dikes? Kana mga instances. The what ifs, wala kayo ga-study na. So if you do that, you can tandem your knowledge in hydrology and flooding studies with the GIS guide. It can answer the question, where? So beneficial or sa inyo kung you do that analysis for both applications. This is just a graph showing you that web mapping is not that old. I think it's as old as I am. So it started in the early 1989, and this has progressed with the updates and shall we say innovations in satellite imagery and the improved transition of the internet. So as you can see, kung saan nag-launch si Google, dito po dahil ni samo expand ang applications nato sa kanang web mapping. So this essentially tells us that you can now access maps online, even from your devices, phones, tablets, computer, laptop, etc. And it's very light and accessible as long as you are connected to the internet. So this is just the workflow that we did for COVID, and perhaps I can divulge more information about this later. So what I'd like to show you now is some other applications of GIS. So this has links on it, so I can actually share some of it later, so that you can check kung unsa day ang output ng sir nga i-expect nimo from us. So it's being shared in the chat box. You can actually access it now. These are examples of projects that we work on and that I also worked before. But these are for web-based applications. In your course for CE23, we will not limit you to online applications. Pwede na offline, but if I explore na mo sa online or offline, then you can choose later which mode you will prefer for your final project. But so far, pabor ang web applications, easy lang siya ma-demonstrate. Okay. So in the chat box, you can actually check the first project that I shared. So this one is a map showing the affected deep wells during the Vinta flood. This was January of 2017, I think, barely 5 or 6 years ago. This tells us and shows us that maps can be a good tool when you want to estimate the impacts of flood. So di naman guna ang flood will just increase the water level of a certain water body. So ang suba lang ba, musapan tubig or ang dagat. But the impacts, especially on the secondary ones, okay, we know na ang water wells, like ang deep wells, nabahaan, so they cannot operate. So even if there's a flood, after that, there's a secondary impact. Wala na tanawan sa atong planners and managers nga. Because the deep wells are now or were flooded rather. So what will be the impact when we do water supply or distribution? So momento nga 4 of the deep wells were shut down in Basago, and they had to be repaired, cleaned again before they get back to their regular operations. So it took them a week before nabalik ang water service dito sa downtown area. So muto nga, it helped everyone to have this map para mas madali ma-identify kung asa mag-water rationing, asa mag-atod tubig. It answers the question where. On the other application, this is one of the projects that I worked with some students from AIM. AIM is the Asian Institute of Management. So they were asking if I can show them an area map where this can focus the areas affected by the Taal volcano eruption. So you can see here that there are hospitals, even schools. You can play around the layers later. And each of these points and polygons will tell us some added information, such as how many will be sent to relief centers, or if we give relief to these people, how many should be prepared, given that the impact of the volcano eruption is as big as this 4-kilometer radius. So we can do estimates. And easier na lang sa gobyerno to make an asset check or mag-do sila estimates. So nagamit po niya siya. Others, like this one, this was commissioned by a party list. So they wanted to check how many voters are there in a certain barangay. And then later put sa province level, how many for every municipality, so that they will know where should they focus their efforts. Para dili masayang ilang kanang voting machinery. So maghatag ba sila og leaflets dire, maghatag ba sila og kanang tapok-tapok aning area, even yung dagan may tao, just to advertise na okay, vote for us. So muna dito go for this case. The other more popular outputs that we made was for the mangroves of Makaharlar Bay, and I think PICE XUSC took off their initiatives for mangrove planting from this website. So we know now which areas we need to plant mangroves, given that there are certain conditions that we need to satisfy. Say the species, say that the soil perhaps, or if the government has plans to put mangroves for development in this area. So we can use this one to check where, especially the question where, and perhaps project some trends. Kung magbutang tao mangrove plantations diri, what will be the effect sa diversity, the biodiversity, the ecology, hydrology. So daghan na siya og applications. But this is just a stepping board on how we can answer the where of mangroves. So this has another version. This one can tell you the information of a certain place. So pag i-click niyo ng polygon dila sa kanang map, you can see na unsa nga species ang balita, no? And then even the mangrove type that we need and the current condition, like newly planted ba siya, or if these are for future plantations, or if these are endemic in that area. Okay, game time. So now that you have an understanding of what would be an application of GIS, I want everyone to access this link. So I'll be sharing also this link. This is basically a game, a simulation game for checking what will be the impact if you have an outbreak of certain disease. So I'll also check here. So this is a simulation made by one of the best GIS softwares in the US. So you can use this one for demonstration purposes. So what we have here is a pre-programmed simulation. So it has some instruction page. You can actually go with instructions or scenarios and make a report. What happens here is you need to design where you want the virus to spread and also design what will be the features of that virus. So saan man nato na kanang design. So you can start by loading. So parehani load pa man siya. And you can close the window here and start the simulation. So what we can edit is like the infection duration. So like if you get the virus, how long will it make your body endure that virus? So para sa COVID, it's 14 days. Pero dire, the maximum that you can edit is 7 days. Okay? Kung may COVID, ano nga time kung gibuhat na sila. So they said, okay, 7 days. Infection distance is how far can one person affect anyone. So let's say, kung pareha sa COVID, di ba, you get the virus if you're at 1 meter. Pero dire, the minimum is 10 meters. Pero let's just say nga na. Mortality rate is 5%. Actually, COVID is 2.5% number. Mortality rate, so around 3%. Infection rate for COVID is very high. Sa COVID is you get the infection and then you share it to 1 out of 2 persons. So meaning the infection rate is 50%. All the more, ang bagong strain, it is at 50 to 60%. So mas dali siya ma-spread. Okay? So inyo lang po ito, i-edit na ninyo yung values dire. Okay? And then you create 3 scenarios. Kamu na yung bala kung sa mo increase bang infection distance, mo saka ba ang mortality rate, or you want it to be just lower. So once nakabuhat na ka nga kanang simulation settings, you can also choose to make it stop at day 20 or not. So for my case, I'll make it stop at day 20. And then click in the screen the buildings and perhaps locations where you want the virus to start spreading. So para makaselect ka og daghan, you can use the CTRL button sa keyboard para magdaghan ka select. So for example, I chose 5 buildings. And then if I'm satisfied, so I can just click. So the map will show us how the virus will spread and how many buildings or people will be affected given that we have this scenario setting. So meaning that the infection duration is 7 days, infection distance is 10 meters, mortality rate is at 3%, and infection rate is at 51%. Okay, so I'm just running the simulation very slow. So this is at day 0 and going forward. I can also increase the speed of the simulation. There are buttons here. Okay, and what I want everyone is that they create, or you create rather, 3 scenarios. Kamu na yung bahala aside kung saan settingan na. Basta na kay output later. You need 3 screenshots of that output. And you will then just answer some questions that I'll be posting in perhaps in e-learning. Okay, I think the internet is quite slow. Hindi siya move. But in your case, if mas yung internet, mas clear ang na mo show nila ang simulation setting. Okay. So, do you have some questions or clarification?
Ay, katong ArcGIS, sir. Does that update in real time or no? Or is it just download of a map?
Which one? Kaning akong i-share nga links?
Yeah.
Some are updated, some are not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? So just play around lang with the simulation para makabalo mo how GIS can be used to simulate some things, para na may idea lang kung saan na to. Okay. Has anyone another question or clarification? Hello?
Saan pag-start usab, sir? Kinahuman nag-simulate akong first.
Pwede
I-refresh siya.
mo
I-refresh usab, sir.
pwede mo i-refresh, pwede sabi mo kanang i-back page. Una na siya back page.
Okay, sir.
So whichever simulation you make, just save it in your computer. Make sure lang a laptop or desktop computer yung gamit. Kaya kung cellphone mo good gamay kaayo, hindi na ito makita ang kanang settings. Make sure lang na create mo ng simulation. Okay. Since you're still doing the simulations, you can actually pause it for now and listen or get back to the Google meeting for some instructions. First, the deadline for the midterm outputs will have to be moved until the 30th of January. So, matingala mo midterm exam na ba yung next week. So sa ato kay delayed man tadaan og 2 weeks because of the enrollment. So I'll have to move the deadline to January 30. And for this subject, there is actually no synchronous exam. You just need to submit a final project and a midterm project. So all of these details will be available once ready na nako ang content. And there will be some quizzes. Usually mag-quiz the next meeting. So for your case, since lamp man nato ang introduction o ang first lesson sa this week, so wala pa may quiz this week. But sunod si mana na natay quiz. So nalang tayo short na quizzes nga ibutang, and participation is not compulsory. Meaning, kung naka-score, hindi makayo siya maka-affect sa grade, but I encourage you to participate. Okay? This will add on to your class participation. So, kung di ka ma-participate, di mo drop mo grade, pero encourage na mo answer sa question kay makatabang man sa inyong learning. Other components of the course, 1 unit na magandang lecture, then 1 unit ang lab. So, kasagara ginani, tungod kay 50-50 ang lab, majority of the grade will come from projects and laboratory exercises. So we target to get 8 to 10 laboratory exercises for the third quarter. So mga 8 na siya kabuok, and ang assignment na is 1 to 2 per week. So kinahanglan yung ihuman. And ang workflow kay during your lecture time, i-show na ko ang kaning general framework or theory behind sa inyong i-perform. And then sa laboratory, kay instruct mo saan mo gamit ang software or tools para makabuhat mo isa ka output, like a laboratory report or exercise. And for this section, I think di man ako inyong laboratory instructor, pero ang mahitabo mong good, ang lecture mo good yapon ang mag-grade. So para kanang pareha ang result, akong sabuton na lang laboratory instructor ninyo ay Sir JC man, na ang submission sa ako na lang, then ang grading siya mag-grade para na-apoy ka ng balancing. So ang grading po, delete tanan siya mag-grade. I think ang midterm o final project lang matabang siya grade. Dayon ang laboratory exercises, para pareha siya o grade sa pika section, ako na lang mag-grade adto. And then third, naday mo yung option nga ma-invite ang inyong classmates na wala naka-enroll. So ang strategy ana kay they just need to participate in the synchronous and asynchronous activities. They will be invited to access the files, mabuhat po Google Drive, dito nila ma-access. And di lang ani kay kung mo decide sila nga mo join third quarter, makasubmit sila sa work, makaget sila og grade, then the next time na i-offer ang course, dito pa lang ma-reflect ilang grades sa SLMIS. So, kung nag-choose po sila nga, nag-attend na sila sa first half, tapos ang second half, later na tiwason, pwede kaya ako na. Okay, hopefully, ako yapon ng instructor or any other teacher, so ako lang i-forward ang grade. So, ilang mag-uul kung wala naka-enroll, kaya ang modules, ang tools, ang exercises, pareha naman. Ang importante lang ang maka-join daan para maka-advance sa buhat activities. Then pag maka-enroll na, say sa summer or sa next baka na semester, dito na rin i-submit inyong grade sa SLMIS. Okay? So I hope klaro na sa tanan parang naamoy kanang enough preparation para ano nga subject. Okay? Naambay pangutana?
Hi, sir. No question, sir.
Yes.
ArcGIS rang atong sir preferred na gamiton para sa GIS.
Dili. Next meeting tomorrow na siya. Akong iingon unsa ang software nga inyong gamiton.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Naapay follow-up question nila? O nga nung dili na mo on sa inyong camera. Wala na ko ikakakita ang mga danggoy direct. Unless hingay internet, no?
Direct kayang lang, sir.
Yeah. Ang sa tupi?
Direct lang, sir.
Dark. Sige lang. Importante makita ang video.
Bahala na yung suga. Direct pang kwarto, sir.
Dark pag yun. Sige lang, Pete. Antos lang, Pete. Nandun mo sa course. Sige, anyone else na naakahay question or clarification? Sige, nagmahay ng uban kay sir, walang niya pa nag-enroll and all. So, sinabtanay lang ta kay na ay mga complications sa class limitations. We had to follow some rules at schedules sa government. So, naging limitation. Kaya kung normal pa nga klase, normal occurring, you can request another section. Dili. Pero tungod kay nagka-complication sa kanang limitation sa number of faculty and students, so kunin nga na limit yun. So, sinabtanay lang ta. And ang isa ka workaround na to ana is katulagin nga pwede mag-advance work ng estudyante, then by the time maka-enroll na, i-submit na lang ang grades sa whoever will be the next instructor.
Sir,
Yes.
good afternoon. Ay, sir, kanang question, sir, ba? Parihara mo mag-post ni Sir Arkiza sad sa e-learn, sir. Sibli usa ang lab ug ang left kamo daw mag-post sa e-learn in one subject po.
Yes, kay ang setup karon ang lecture raman ang na-e-learn account. So, usa lang ang mag-post.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Napay uban pangutana? How about si Mr. Val Magalion? Are you there, Val?
Wala, sir.
Lagi, abira ba ganyan na sa'yo kung schedule nga nabutang kong synchronous class karon. Make up na siya sa kadtong na miss sa first month. So, muning naani karon sa January. So, maybe na yung one ka na absent kay na sila other classes pa. My apologies for that, but it's the only available schedule for me this week. So, if you want, you can just watch the video later. Para na amoy apamoy maapas nga info. Okay, so I guess I will not delay you more. Okay, but you have other things to do, and it's been 15 minutes since we started the conversation this afternoon. So my hope and pray for everyone is that you religiously practice and comply the requirements for this course. This is quite a very light lang course. 1 unit in lecture, 1 unit in laboratory. So meaning we meet once a week during Thursdays sa inyong lecture, and then for your laboratory, sinabtanay lang tangan, the schedule yun ani could be dili ta mag-meet sa laboratory, but anytime in the week mag-post an instructor of laboratory exercises and recorded videos. Then you need to comply everything, and there are only 2 deadlines, midterm and finals. And for the midterm, it will be January 30. For the finals, it will be sometime February or end of February. So naradira sa last weeks of February. And in terms of grade composition, I can show it to you in the next meeting tomorrow. But bulk of the grade will come from your laboratory exercises. So mga 60% siguro, kung yung estimate. Then the other remaining will come from the final project and midterm project. Okay, now may 30% for final exams. Part of it will be projects, and then 10.5% which will be from midterm exam, which is a midterm project. So we'll work that around. Mga 40 will come from 2 projects, and the other 60 will come from the exercises, some of the quizzes, and then some other assignments that I'll post and require you to submit. Okay? Nasabtan ba na?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you have no more questions, you can actually leave the classroom. But if you have still more lingering questions, you can just stay. And if you're not comfortable in on your classmate, you can ask later. Okay. So goodbye, everyone. Hope to see you in tomorrow's session. It's at schedule and 1 to 2 p.m. happen. Okay, for section B3. Okay, so bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.